What's up, it's Nick Monty. In this video we're going to talk about vocal production. I want to show you guys my process for vocal layering as well as how to mix those layers into a track. And for that, we're going to take a closer look at the bridge for my new song, The Story Goes. There's a lot going on here vocally, and so I thought this would be a good song to showcase all this. So without further ado, I'm just going to play through this section a little bit so you can hear where we're starting from, and then I'll dive in deeper. Here we go.
It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stay. That's the way it goes at the end of the day, the end of the day.
Okay, so what we got going on here, we have a lead vocal, a vocal double, a vocoder track, and then two harmonies. And all the processing on these tracks are similar with some distinct differences. So we'll start with the lead vocal. First plugin I have on here is the stock 7-band EQ from Pro Tools. Now my process for EQing generally is that I'll use this plugin for all the cutting of frequencies, and then I use other plugins for the boosting. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of control I have over these parameters, and thus I can be a lot more surgical. Whereas boosting, I can be a lot more broad, and I like it that way. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm high passing up to 120. And the reason for that is that there's nothing useful below that in a vocal. It's just going to be low rumbling sounds. The second thing that we're doing is we're cutting out a little bit of low mids here at 592. And that probably sounded a little nasally, a little honky, so I got rid of that a little bit. But other than that, there weren't too many frequencies that were jumping out at me. The next thing that we have here is the R comp from Waves. And I like this plugin because it's pretty transparent sounding compressor. Now we got a 4:1 ratio, a fast attack, auto release, which is nice because it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and then a modest threshold. Now I'm using this compressor just to tame the sound a little bit going into the next batch of plugins, so I'm not hitting it too hard. So I'll show you the amount of gain reduction I'm getting here, and it's not too much.
It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stay.
So as you can see, the gain reduction isn't rarely going below 3. And like I said, I'm just taming this out a little bit so it's a little bit more even going into the next batch of plugins. So the next thing that we got going on here is the virtual mix rack from Slate. And I love this plugin because of all the great analog modeling that they do. So the first thing in the chain here is this Neve style EQ. And all I'm doing here is adding a tad of 2000 Hertz. And that adds a little bit more articulation and a little bit more energy to the mix. Next thing that we got here is this Revival plugin. And I don't know exactly what this thing does because the knobs are pretty broad and it just says shimmer and thickness, but I believe this is a harmonic exciter, and the difference between that and an EQ is that an EQ will boost frequencies that are already there in a track, while a harmonic exciter actually adds new harmonic content. And I like the thickness on a vocal because it adds body to a vocal without it sounding overly muddy. So the next thing that we got in the chain is a little bit more EQ. I love this custom series lift. Once again, pretty broad controls, but setting it to the silky setting adds a beautiful crispness to the vocal that you just can't beat. Next thing in the chain, we got this 1176 style compressor, and I'm using that to level out the sound finally so it's right in your face. Now let's move on to the double. Once again, we got the stock 7-band EQ, but the major difference here is I'm going a lot higher on my high pass. And the reason for that is that having too much low frequencies in a bunch of vocal tracks will really build up and cause muddiness in a mix. So other than the lead vocal, I like to keep the lows out of all the other vocal tracks. The only other thing that we got going on here is a little bit of a low mid cut. Once again, we got R comp from Waves, and I'm going harder on the compression here because on the extra vocals, I like to compress things a little harder so that it sits right there with the vocal and it doesn't vary dynamically almost at all. Once again, we got VMR and we got the custom series lift, adding silky, but probably a little bit more. And then Once again, we got the 1176 to level out that sound finally. Now let's move on to the vocoder track. Now with this one, we got some more drastic EQ here, and you'll hear why in a second, but basically what happened is the vocoder generated a lot of rich low frequencies that just weren't helpful in the track. And like I said before, you don't want too much of those low frequencies in other vocals because they build up and make a mix sound muddy. So I'll show you the vocoder track by itself, and I will toggle on and off the EQ so that you can hear what it's doing, and it's quite a bit of a difference here.
It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stay. That's the way it goes at the end of the day. The end of the day.
So as you can see there, we're clearing out a lot of lows and low mids. And not only that, but on this custom series lift, I got it on the present setting, and I'm adding as much presence as I can because I thought that's what was necessary to make it compete with the lead vocal tonally. And this just goes to show you that you don't want to think about how much processing you're adding, you want to think about the end result of what you're getting. So if it sounds right, don't worry about adding too much. Now let's move on to the harmonies. So the harmonies here are done in head voice, which the main line is sung in chest voice, and I like to blend head voice and chest voice together, but for that you have to do some tone shaping here, and that's where I'm taking out here a lot of low mids. And I felt they were fighting with the lead vocal, so I took them out, and then things kind of sat nice with one another. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the lead vocal here, and I'm going to start mixing in the other vocals all dry, and then I'm going to start mixing in the effects so you can see how this comes together. Here we go.
It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stake. That's the way it goes at the end of the day. The end of the day. It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stake. That's the way it goes at the end of the day. The end of the day. It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stake. That's the way it goes at the end of the day. The end of the day.
So now you can see all those things come together, and you see how each thing adds on to one another. So now that you've heard all the vocals interacting with one another, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this with the track, and I'm going to take out the vocoder, I'm going to take out the harmonies, and then I'm going to put them back in so you can see what those specifically add. So here we go.
It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stake. That's the way it goes at the end of the day. The end of the day. It's sad to see you go that way, but you had no way to claim your stake.
Okay, so now you can see what those extra vocals are adding to the mix. So on this EP as a whole, I tried a lot of different vocal production techniques throughout rather than sticking to one set method for the EP. And I learned a lot during this process, so in future videos, I hope to share what I've learned with you. Now, if you got something out of this video, if you liked it, leave it a like, give me a comment below, and please subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.